What's up with this spooky house? The Vanishing Window by Richard Barker Shelton is a really fun mystery story about a bank teller and his wife. Is he going mad? What's up with his compulsive behavior? And in this video I will also be talking a little bit about mental illness and the diagnosis and treatment back in 1901. This is Obscure Book Adventures. And I am your host Annie, and let's go back to January of 1901, when The Vanishing Window was published in the Black Cat magazine. The story is about a bank teller, George Vinal, and his wife. And when they moved to a rented house, George starts to notice something strange about the house opposite of his, and that is that there is something strange going on with the windows of this house. The number of windows start to change every once in a while. Sometimes there's a window added, sometimes a window subtracted, and there is no obvious reason for this to be found. Is George going mad? Well, he does get depressed and he does get compulsive behavior. He starts to count stuff for no apparent reason. The Vanishing Window is a short story of only 6 pages and it's free to read on the Internet Archive. I'll put a link in the description box below if you want to read it. So I won't tell too much about the plot, as I don't want to spoil the plot for you in case you want to read it. But the plot isn't that ingenious, but the writing style is good, in my opinion. And even now, 124 years later, it's still very readable and it doesn't feel outdated or anything. And it reads like a mystery story. Somebody is at a party and tells this kind of mystery story which happened to him. And it's told well, I think, anyway. And it's about these appearing and disappearing windows. And only in the last couple of paragraphs we learn what is really going on and what's the reason for these appearing and disappearing windows. Some things in the conclusion, well, they don't really add up, come to think of it, but that didn't keep me from being entertained whilst reading this story, I must admit. Richard Barker Shelton was born in 1876 and died in 1944. I haven't been able to find very much about him, other than he also wrote a story in Adventure magazine and several stories in Blue Book magazine, for which he also wrote under the name John Barton Oxford. He was also an editor for the Catholic Telegraph in 1916, but he's probably most well known for his screenplay The Availing Prayer. That was a film made in 1914 and it starred the then very famous Dorothy Gish, the sister of Lillian Gish, who was an excellent actress in her own right, and actor Raoul Walsh. I read in Richard Barker Shelton's obituary that he started his career working for a wholesale drug company. Now this really makes me curious. Did he use some of his knowledge of drugs? Like for example, Agatha Christie also knew a lot about drugs, medicines, and poisons and such things. Did Shelton use this knowledge of drugs in his stories? That really makes me curious, because in The Vanishing Window he does not use this knowledge he gained for this wholesale company. But he also after his writing career, he went to work for an advertising business, and later he was a reporter on the staff of the Boston Herald. And in 1911 he went back to writing fiction. He was also a member of the Papyrus Club, and this was a prestigious literary organization founded in 1872, and it contained and hosted many very well-known and excellent writers and journalists of the time, and that included the very famous Mark Twain and Walt Whitman. I would not say that The Vanishing Window is a literary masterpiece, but the fact that Shelton did belong to such a prestigious club, well, it must say something about his writing abilities. I'd like to take a sidestep. In The Vanishing Window, George gets a compulsive behavior, and he starts counting stuff for no apparent reason. Well, the vanishing window and the reappearing window must be the cause of it. It's not a spoiler. And he does get depressed. But this really made me curious. What made Sheldon mention this compulsive behavior? And I think the reason why he mentions this is to give the story more urgency. If this window problem is not solved, he gets a mental breakdown. Not only, well, he has this compulsive behavior, but also he gets depressed. And I think one of the reasons why Shelton came up with this idea is that he picked up some knowledge of medicine while he worked for this wholesale drug company. He may have been interested in psychiatric treatment, research and treatment as well. As in 1901, this was still in the early stages, and he may have been interested in it. And the work of the world-renowned Sigmund Freud was widely discussed at the time, although not widely accepted or applied yet. I must say. Compulsive behavior was known as an illness, although it was probably called neurosis or obsessional neurosis. This wasn't something that was treated by a psychiatrist. More often than not, patients were institutionalized in insane asylums and most commonly treated with hydrotherapy or electrotherapy. And you can imagine these are not pleasant treatments. So George, having this depression and compulsive behavior, would give the reader at the time in 1901 a feeling of urgency or suspense than it does now, because these unpleasant treatments and this institutionalizing in insane asylums, well, it was really appalling, and it was not a pretty foresight, as it were. All in all, I did like this little short story, The Vanishing Window by Richard Barker Shelton. Thanks for watching.